As you know, the Bristol group has worked with the seminary to develop the Canopy Apartments. Those apartments, I think all of you now know, have been sold. The proceeds from that sale have gone to the seminary's endowment to continue to support the work of the seminary into the future. As we shared from the beginning of this process, the goal there were multiple goals. One of them was to have resource for the seminary to help financially in the work and the mission of the seminary. The second was equally important, and that was to have a new housing alternative option for our students, particularly those who have families, who come with families to the seminary. We have established a scholarship fund to help provide opportunities for students to be able to live at Canopy, to be able to work with the rent costs that are there, because they're obviously higher than what would be here at Richmond Hall or Moore Hall or Melrose Apartments. So that scholarship fund is also funded by some of the proceeds from the sale. So the sale has helped the seminary in multiple ways and will continue to help the seminary in multiple ways as we go into the future. There have been many questions about what's going to happen with the other 19 acres. There were 34 acres, and my math, let me get my math right, but there were 34 acres. 15 acres are now taken by the Canopy Apartments. We have 19 acres that are left. And know that there has been a great deal of interest in what the seminary's vision is for those other 19 acres. The vision is very simple, and that is to create green space to nurture the support of two ministries that are hopefully going to be a part of the vision and ministry of the seminary as we move into the future, one directly and one more indirectly. The first thing that's happened, of course, is we're trying to get the green space in proper shape so that we'll be able to utilize it in a helpful way going into the future. That has meant first the removal of facilities or structures that do no longer fit into the mission and vision of the seminary. The first was the McGuire House, and of course that has received some attention in the local news of late after that building was demolished. The building was demolished because it does no longer fit within the mission and ministry of the seminary. It hasn't for some time. I mean, that building was closed when I came as president in 2007, had been closed sometime before that. And the wider range or understanding of the mission and ministry of the seminary also, it is a facility that does not fit within the ethos of the institution, and for that reason also it had less of a hold within the future life of the school. All of you know, or most of you know, who are directly connected with the seminary, that we are trying to find ways in which we might live into the vision of the seminary in a way that helps us think broadly about issues, not only of theological education, but of justice as they relate to theological education. One of the things that's been important for us is to try to use our resources in a way that helps in that regard. So on the Charlotte campus, one of our donors has given us an endowment to create the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation. Here on the Richmond campus, a portion of the proceeds from the Canopy sale were directed toward the center, endowing the Center for Womanist Leadership so that it will go on in perpetuity to do its mission that will help us deal with issues related to concerns, mission and theological concerns for women of color in this country and around the world. And in that way, also help us to think about issues of justice for people of color more broadly. So the Canopy Apartments and its sale has helped us to envision that future for the school as well. And then we're also looking, hopefully, within the near future, of creating green space where the Rice Apartments are. It's my goal to be able to find ways that we will be able to raise funds as necessary to bring the Rice Apartments down, create green space there, and that green space will help to further the mission and ministry of the school as related to Yopon Place, which Emily Nice is going to speak to in just a moment, and also Shalom Farms, which Dominic Barrett will speak to in just a moment as well. But the goal for me, and I think the goal for the Board of Trustees, is to see that 19 acres expand our ministry into some unique ways and forms. We have already begun with creating green space where the McGuire House was. We're going to continue to create green space where Rice Apartments is. And we have begun fundraising to do some other things already on that land. For example, to create an environmentally friendly playground that will be on one part of the 19 acres. We're also committing some funds that we have developed or raised to nurture and sustain into the future the walking track. And part of that will be figuring out how we better grade the land so that there aren't little swimming pools out there whenever we have hard rains. Also to secure the walking track itself, not to pave it over with concrete or asphalt or anything like that, but to just get the more secure the walking paved area so it's not going underwater and that type of thing. To introduce shrubbery and other kinds of foliage that will help with the drainage, so will also help with the grading of the land. So also to add exercise stations back where we took down the old ones that were rather falling apart. So we're trying to get the land back into the shape that it was in. That's one of the goals. And then having done that, to push forward with the vision in terms of Yopon Place and Shalom Farms. I would like in the future to be able to tell folk that we not only own the land, but that the land has been incorporated in our vision, is no longer just kind of sitting there as something we own, but that it is also a part of our ministry and vision. And I'm hopeful that in the long run, there will be ways in which Yopon Place and Shalom Farms might connect with us in terms of what our faculty do in the classroom, as well as what we do in terms of an extended mission and vision. So it wouldn't be just like something that we're also doing, but it would also be something that we're doing that's tied into what's happening and how our faculty teach and how our students learn. Not just supervised ministry opportunities, but I would hope also, we have some courses by faculty already that try to incorporate things related to the land. I would hope we could be even more conscious and focused on that possibility as we move into the future. But obviously that will require conversation with the dean and with the faculty, as well as with those at Shalom Farms and Yopon Place. So that's a nutshell kind of sense of what is happening there. I'm trying to make sure I stay at my time frame. I've gone just a minute over it, but there will be time for some questions because I know I've left out some things that you may have questions about. At this point, let me introduce Emily Nice, who is a 2020 graduate of Union Presbyterian Seminary, and she's also someone who has the vision for Yopon Place that I've been excited to help nurture and develop. And I will ask her to talk a little bit about Yopon Place. Emily?
Thank you. Yes, and it's really good to be with all of you today. So thanks for this opportunity. I wish we could all be in person, and I look forward to the day we can do that on the land and have a potluck or something. But anyways, so first I want to, Brian already kind of said it, but just to clarify exactly what we're talking about with Yopon Place, it's the physical, publicly accessible piece of land across the street, the park space, so where that winding trail is. There's that serene trail that goes under the large canopy trees, the labyrinth and picnic tables, and then adjacent to that is Shalom Farms, 6 acres, and where they have their food justice work on the north side. And so all of this land, as Brian was saying, is just an incredible gift to the many diverse people already using it, which I'm sure includes some of you all. And we just really believe in its potential to offer more gifts of healing and health to our seminary and neighboring communities. In fact, I really think the the potential is quite exponential. And so we're really envisioning that park, publicly accessible space as Yopon Place. And so Yopon Place, in a nutshell, envisions a shared multi-use green space for the north side that cultivates collective peace through outdoor recreation, community storytelling or community story sharing, and ecological partnerships. We believe that's how God's Spirit has already been moving there. And so Yopon Place is really dedicated to exploring the ways we can intentionally, more robustly support those movements through organic and programmatic ways that recreate the ways we relate to ourselves, each other, and our earth, and then that ultimately to God's Spirit with us. And I really just think in this, especially we're probably all quite aware in this particular American context, this moment in history, how important public natural places are, where we can really learn to be fully human together outside and with nature and each other in more diverse ways. And so we really need those new practices, those new stories, and really just a whole new way, a new narrative guiding us forward. And we need to name the kind of community and future we want to create together, not just in theory, but in place. And so that's where that the vision of the Yopon plant comes into play. It's the metaphor for thriving, and it's actually defined by the same characteristics of the plant, of the mustard plant that Jesus describes in the vision of the kingdom. And so, yeah, it's this humble but very scrappy little plant that grows here from zone 6 down in South and North America. It's the only caffeinated tea plant in North America that we know of. And it has, like I said, those same characteristics as the mustard plant of Palestine that Jesus named in his vision for how to recreate the kingdom among us. So those characteristics are that it's indigenous, so it reminds us to thrive locally, to honor what is here among us and has been. Yopon, and to be in partnership. Yopon is medicinal. It reminds us to seek pathways of healing and health. And also, while humans, we would roast the leaves for tea, the berries also, they exist just for birds. So it also encourages us to think about ways to be hospitable both to the human community, but to our earth other community, all those creatures we share this world with. And then Yopon is also only known to us because of the native peoples to this land, which reminds us to honor and remember those whose stories have been marginalized, forgotten. And so these are really the values that we are undertaking in our program designs, partnerships, and practices for being a new kind of community together. And so, like I said, that partnership approach is key. And so there's Shalom Farms, of course, and several other local interested groups, nonprofits, and lots of ways we've made networking. Luckily, this started a long time ago. Actually, well, I'm not a long time ago. It feels like a long time for me, but when I was a student 2 years ago. So the networking has been luckily started long before COVID, and really had some good connections in the community for ways that we can start thinking about our partnerships as a seminary and as Yopon Place. And we'll also, of course, want to partner with the other centers on campus and be as integrated and holistic as we can as we approach things. And really just the seminary is, or this piece of land is the seminary's very literally public land. You know, it's where people go and find connection. And so the ways that we can think about who we are in the public square, the church in the world, this piece of land really offers an important example of how we can do that and really live into it. And so I just wanted to share quickly our, that was a lot of values and vision and mission, but 3 immediate goals, just so that everyone can be aware and ask more questions. For me, we're pursuing a curriculum greenhouse, so ways to explore existing and new classes that can share in the Yopon Place vision. Interested in very integrated, embodied learning, eco-theology and community engagement, creative projects and internships. Like I said, this started for me when I was an intern, and then I was able to have many classes and small projects to build on that research in ways that I was interested in exploring this within the community. The second program goal is really rewilding the land itself. Right now, it's the most minimal maintenance, that we can do because it's such a large piece. And it's, we just cut grass there, but it really looking at ecological restoration, so habitat restoration, probably meadow restoration there. It's most originally a kind of marshlands. So we don't want it to actually be muddy for people to walk through, but we want to encourage an ecosystem that's more natural to that space. And actually today was a great day. The Natural Garden, a group from Harrisonburg who's really dedicated to that kind of design, was able to come down and begin their assessment on the land today, which was exciting. And again, though, to do that, that requires quite a bit of professional kind of eyes and hands at the beginning sometimes. But what I'm also really excited about is ways that we can incorporate these partnerships, these volunteer days for all of us to be involved in really placemaking, giving that place our investment and our connection. The third piece is storytelling, of course. So really, I think getting to places of healing and health are about knowing both our stories, others' stories, and the Earth story, and how all of these work together. And we really just need prophetic, truth-telling, diverse, but unifying stories, as you know, right now, these days. And one of those models will do quite a few things. There's already a community storyboard where you can submit a story on the land. I got 2 teenagers to do a mural, and it asked the question, how has this land been healing or beneficial to you? And so I definitely encourage anyone to go there. You can submit a story on the website, or you can submit, there's a lockbox there, you can drop a little note in, and I'll print them up and laminate them. But there's also a model of storytelling I'm quite interested in that's large and public in a different way. And so
yes, thank you very much.
I learned about that in Oregon, and there's a town that's been doing that for about 10 years there already, and some others who've picked it up as well around the nation. But I'm thinking about twice a year, I'll work with 6 community members, which would include some of you possibly, and we will work kind of coaching over several months, 10-minute stories around one particular topic. A topic maybe like the kindness of strangers, or resiliency, or something that is a positive, healing, but also honest storytelling topic. And then on one night, all those 6 stories will be shared. It's a public gathering for people to come together and really practice community, putting up the chairs. There will be music from community members, food and drink. And so that's something I really look forward to, especially post-pandemic, being able to have these public gatherings where we can get together in a really diverse room that's a little different than other things happening. So those are the 3 most immediate goals for me. And as we develop Yaupon Place, and if you're interested in being involved, there's one way is just to get out there and get to know the land yourself, and get to know neighbors and talk, and wear your mask. But there's ways to really be there and start connecting. I also really want to hear people's interests and curiosities. This starts and will only grow in a sustainable, healthy way if this is a shared vision. And so wherever you're interested, please reach out. And I look forward to making those connections. And then the third way, we're about to announce a walking challenge, and it'll be quite simple. It's more of a walking invitation, but it'll be from Easter to Pentecost, so 50 days, resurrection to recreation. And I'll send out a weekly meditation, and you can kind of get to know the values and vision of Yaupon Place a little bit more through that, and connect with people who are also pursuing the walking challenge. So I'll throw the link in. But I really should stop talking now and let Dominic take us on to the next round. So thanks again. But yes, officially introducing Dominic Barrett from Shalom Farms.
Thanks, Emily. I think I have a hard stop in 2 minutes at 4:40. So No. We're totally fine. I'd rather have questions anyway. So I'll just say we are so grateful at Shalom Farms. So as you don't know, we're a nonprofit focused on food access issues in the city of Richmond, and have been so grateful to be hosted and welcomed at the Westwood Tract for the past few years now. Last year, we actually almost tripled production on that site there on North Side, and continued to hope to sort of expand within our footprint there. Some of you can kind of picture almost a weird hourglass leased area. We have the southern section kind of between Ken and Mike's house that then comes closer together, where the structure that you may have seen, which I'm happy to answer questions about. We put a sort of shipping container barn structure there that when it's all said and done, we think will look really nice and really function very nicely in that space, and allow us to both amp up our production, but also do more community partnership and just have a more versatile space there. And then we've continued to expand to the sort of the northern section between the walking trail and canopy. And I feel like that the site so far has exceeded my expectations, both in terms of sort of immediate, obvious productivity and function for the organization, but also in terms of the ways in which we think it can weave into initiatives of the seminary, initiatives of the community, and I think Yopan is as great of an example as that as any. So we are really, really grateful to be there and happy to be there. And I'm happy to, if people have questions about what we're up to currently or in the future there, answer them. But for the sake of time, I'll leave it there. But we hope to continue to establish ourselves there. I think in a perfect world, we'd love to figure out a way in the coming years to establish our offices there and figure out whether it's one of these existing homes on the property or another way to sort of establish our organizational presence there, because we really love being there with you all, and we think it can be really valuable for us, the seminary, and the community. There, done, 4:40.
Hey, that's something, Dominic. Yeah. Thank you. And let me echo, I would also, and I'm talking with Dominic about ways to see if we can have anchored hosting site for their offices there that might be in conjunction with what we do as well. So we're having those conversations, and I'm excited about that. And I think Dominic is as well. So let me not say anything else. Let me just pause here and ask if you all have questions for either Dominic or Emily or myself. Well, while you're thinking, I can say one thing. I didn't say that we have a rather major grant that Evelyn Terry and Emily have put together to one of the foundations that's been really supportive of the seminary. And we are hoping that we'll hear good news sometime in the early fall from them. So as you know, the Center for Womanist Leadership started through grants that enabled it to continue its work, and now we've been able to sustain it. I'm hopeful that grant resources will also help us get the Yopan Place underway. Always take it as a nice sign when I don't have a whole lot of questions, but that means we were very clear in our presentation. But please, if you do have any, don't hesitate. Yeah, Ken, thank you.
Well, I want to hear more from Dominic because he spoke for 2 minutes. So Dominic, your 5-year vision for Shalom Farms, because I'm looking at it right now from one of my rooms in the home. So what do you hope things look like for Shalom Farms, that part of the Westwood Tract, 5 years from now?
That's a great question. And I can probably give you a slightly better answer to that in like 5 months. We actually just finished like an updated, took us almost a year to sort of update mission and vision work so we could really do thoughtful strategic planning, knowing sort of what we were pointing towards and what our lane was. And so actually we're starting staff SWOT analysis work this month to lead up to strategic planning retreats in May or June. I will say that in the 5-year plan, I don't think like from a visual perspective, like thinking about your seat, like what you stare at, I don't think I imagine something dramatically different. Certainly in terms of infrastructure, the only two major things that would come to mind for me would be potentially an additional hoop house for season extension, sort of the large cover structure. We would ideally keep those together there, but we need to develop an actual kind of 5-year, 7-year site plan for that site now that we're kind of established there. So I could see that. And then obviously, as I mentioned, we would love to figure out whether it's next to you, Ken, or across the way, or somewhere nearby, negotiating a lease at some point to really move our offices over there. But I think a lot of the growth that I see happening there is really both how are we using the soil, how are we caring for the soil, how are we being more productive and clever with that, and then how are we using the space as it relates to people in terms of doing more on-farm education, both with the community at large and with the seminary, and continue to expand our volunteer operations there. But I would imagine 5 years from now, just don't hold me to this. If something dramatically different comes out of our planning in the next 8 months, I'll get back to you. But I would think from 5 years from now, you would only notice sort of minor, the untrained eye would probably only notice minor differences, maybe an extra hoop house, maybe another little sort of auxiliary thing with the structure that's being built there. But that would be much more about sort of productivity, diversity of crops, how we're using that site for on-farm education, how we may be partnering with Yopan and the ways in which they're using the space around us. But maybe I'm not being adventurous enough. We'll see what comes out of planning.
And that's helpful. Let me do a quick follow-up. So I was more interested in your output in terms of produce than building structures.
Sure, great. So
that you all have already seen in the last year or so.
And I could actually pull up some actual hard numbers for you. I would imagine 5 years from now, it would be bold to say we're doing much more than like doubling, probably doubling roughly what we're doing now in terms of total production. And that will be a mix of like putting into production spaces that currently we haven't expanded to, that we've been cover cropping and building soil health with, and then starting to be a little bit more intensive and creative with how we grow within the existing footprint. I suppose at the end of 5 years, we may be talking to the seminary and Yopan about, hey, can we add this half acre or this quarter acre? But I think we have our hands full for the next 5 years of just using the space that we have as thoughtfully and efficiently as possible. Because we've also have walkways and wider than they need to be, to accommodate volunteers and to use the space, in a more friendly way. But we could be a little more intensive and still very responsible if we needed to sort of increase productivity in that way.
Dominic, there was a question on the chat about you mentioned the new structure. Can you say a little bit more about the new structure that's just going up?
Yeah, so it's the base of it is 2 shipping containers with then sort of traditional trusses over it and then lean-tos off of the side. So the open area is a sort of it'll be our main washing packing station. It'll have some simple sinks and washing rinsing station along one wall. We'll try to keep it open so it can be versatile if we want to have meetings under there or have more volunteers kind of get under there. The lean-tos off the side, one will probably have picnic tables. The other will probably have the tractor. We like to kind of consolidate some of the stuff that's kind of like spreading out right now around our little shed structure there and get much more of that storage inside and undercover, up, hidden kind of on top of the shipping containers. We'll have the shipping containers kind of covered and painted a nice sort of uniform color and look when it's all said and done at the very least, and maybe add sort of siding to them at some point. But it's a very basic, even though it's actually a more complicated structure than I imagined working with the designers. And in function, it's pretty simple. Some storage. There will have an insulated room, which at one point we've talked about kind of turning into a small office. We may or may not do that at this point, but a little insulated room, probably a washer and dryer for gloves and farm clothes and things like that. But really open area for washing, packing. And then those who haven't seen, we have 2 walk-in coolers there for sort of 2 zones to keep all of our produce stored efficiently there. Now I've taken more than 5 minutes, I think.
Oh, no, there were some questions, and they were good questions pointed your direction. There was also the question in the chat of how Yopan Place and Shalom Farms might collaborate together in the future. I know that the 2 of you have not really had formal meetings of such, but do either of you want to opine as to how you might dream about that, if you wanted to dream about it?
I'll let Emily sort of take that. I'll just say that I think there's a number of ways in which we can. And I also think it'll make it easier for us to sort of be a more formal partner of the seminary by having someone both established like that at the site, but also someone like Emily who can kind of bridge those gaps in a way that like no one on staff at Shalom Farms is like hired and paid to have that level of expertise or focus on diving deeper. And so I think we will always kind of be a little more passive and wait for sort of those specific opportunities. And I think Emily can kind of help bring those to us. But Emily, why don't you say some of the things that we've thought about and talked about?
Sure. One of my internships at seminary was with Shalom Farms and was able to be on some of their committees and stuff too afterwards. But so yeah, I think about that often. And one of the places I'm most excited about is probably their school groups and how often pre-pandemic they were able to have some wonderful gatherings of school, but also during the summer camps would come out. And sometimes though, they've got you can correct me, Dominic, but what I would notice is there's a lot of production that needs to happen. And sometimes there's too young of students who come to the farm to really do much productive work on the farm. And so being a partner with Shalom Farms, I could imagine us offering kind of joint experiences where they can do some volunteering with the farm, but then also come over to our side where they can maybe learn about native plants and take a walk and do maybe some yoga or some artwork, just some ways to engage differently outdoors and kind of balance out that experience. There was one time I was with Catherine and we had a small group of second graders on the farm, and we were doing some kind of hard manual labor of like carrying mulch, and we were doing it for hours. And the kids just turned to me and her at one point, and like a few little girls, and they just go, "Are we being punished?" And so, yeah, I mean, of course we weren't, but I think there's some ways also when rice comes down, maybe putting a pavilion there so there's some larger space for us to do those outdoor recreational programming would be of strong interest for me. I'll stop there though. There's, like he said, there's a lot of ideas.
Ask a question.
Oh, yes, Evelyn.
Okay. I always think of school groups. Would there ever be an opportunity to have teaching moments about nutrition?
Yeah, that's Dominic. Yeah, go ahead.
So in my mind, that's one of the sort of the most exciting pieces about the location, our farm where we are here, and really untapped pieces. We have this sort of like unhealthy kind of binary to some degree within our organization, right? We have like our farm activities, and then we have our sort of food access programming education that we do, including our prescription work, which includes cooking classes and food skills education. And the north side location at Union Seminary is really this opportunity to kind of bridge those two things. We've done some of our prescription produce work. We actually did a cohort that met multiple times 2 years ago at the site. And we would have done a little bit more of that this past year. We have a staff member currently on staff who really has this vision of developing a program to help connect women of color with their food and with their food history. And I think she really sees a lot of possibility to kind of build on that and use the north side location at the seminary for that kind of on-farm programming. We haven't gone so far as yet as like building in the idea of like a true kind of like outdoor kitchen classroom there, but I think that's, believable. I can imagine that at some point down the road being something we take on. But in the meantime, we're set up that we can do cooking classes anywhere. We've got, hot plates and little kits with all the stuff you need, and we can do them on picnic tables as we've done before. And so I definitely imagine doing some of that, as well as perhaps adding that to some of the on-farm kind of volunteer education we do.
Are any of the children allowed to take any of the produce with them when they go home?
So,
because, something like a nutrition, because to me, this is food justice that we're talking about. And then if they learn, say, a simple recipe of how to cook that one thing that they're taking home, they can take it home and share it with their family. That's what I see as a.
Yeah, and obviously, certainly that's sort of the heart of what a lot of our programs are doing, kind of off the farm in the community, but we've not done much of that on farm. On a case-by-case basis with certain groups, we do have a sort of a process in place where groups will come, spend some time with us, and then take food home with them. There's a couple of organizations in particular that do that a lot at our Powhatan site. So we're not opposed to doing that at the north side site either, but we just don't have that many formal, especially with COVID last year,
right,
situations where that's happening in an ongoing way. And so I wouldn't want to commit to that happening in a sort of super serious way right away, but I think it's not a big leap to imagine that obviously happening, since it already does in a couple ways.
Yeah, getting back to Emily, she said that children felt like they were being punished. Maybe this would be a way to say, we're not punishing you. So anyway.
And I admit that was a really hot day, so I'm sure they don't always feel that way, but it was just an example.
So I will mute again.
I have a few more minutes if there are any other questions. I don't want to leave without giving everybody an opportunity. It's been very nice to see all of you and to know of your interest in what's going on. How is the neighborhood feeling about us? Well, of course, I'm not a mind reader, so I don't have the answer to that. There are some persons who are still upset with us about the canopy apartments. I mean, let me just be honest about that. I also know that there are some persons who are very grateful to us because of things like the Canopy Apartments, and also grateful that we brought Shalom Farms into the neighborhood. I also know that we are trying to look forward. I've met with one of the new city council people and had really positive conversation. Just met today with Mike Frontiero, with the president of the one of our neighborhood associations. Had a wonderful conversation as well. And I've also met individually with persons in the neighborhood, some who were upset by the apartments and others who just wanted to learn more. So I've been trying to listen and talk, even as I know that there's some folk who are upset. So I think we're building into our future in terms of bridges. And I think Shalom Farms and Yopon Place help with that. I do want to be clear, though, Yopon Place and Shalom Farms are not the seminary's attempt to make people feel good about the apartments. There's not that kind of one-to-one, correspondence. They are, in my mind, a real desire to respond to the gifts God has given this seminary. And we have some wonderful gifts in terms of people, but also in terms of assets. And how might we use those gifts, not just to help the students who come, because that's our primary mission, but also to help the community in which the seminary is located, both Charlotte and in Richmond. So in Charlotte, I think we're trying to do that with the Center for Social Justice and Reconciliation. We're doing it with in other ways, making the library a resource and having the building be a resource in Charlotte. But we're also trying specifically with that center to reach out in some broad ways into the community and have the seminary be a resource for the Charlotte community. I think here in Richmond, we're trying to do that with the Center for Women's Leadership, with the Global Mission Center that brings an international presence of students to our campus and to this community, but also with the assets and resources that we have. And one of the ways in which we can do that is to try to be a participant in the transformation of the community in a positive way. And I think our partnership with Shalom Farms is doing that. And our partnership with, well, not really a partnership, Yopon Place is a part of us, that the encouragement and the growth of that as an idea is also a part of how we can use our resources in that positive way. So yes, it builds bridges, but that's not the reason why we're involved in Shalom Farms and Yopon Place. It's because we're trying to figure out how we can use these wonderful assets God has given us to extend the range of our ministry. And these are natural ways in which I think we can do that. Yeah, I think that's right, Crystal. It's how we're trying to live out being for the church and the world. And I think as we do that more and more, we'll continue to build more friends in the seminary, even those who have been upset with us because of the McGuire House or because of the apartments. But again, let me just be clear. We have some folk who have been very supportive of us, even while others have been upset on both of those issues. So I think that's important to note, that I've heard from both sides in that regard, and have appreciated and regret that we have hurt persons, but also want everyone to know we're trying to live into using these resources in the best way we can for the uplift of the seminary's mission and ministry. And that sometimes brings challenge, but it also brings wonderful opportunity. And I think what we're doing right now is living into the wonderful opportunity. So Dominic, thank you for being here with us. And Emily, thank you for being here with us. And I hope that everyone who's been here listening today will become kind of evangelists for the seminary's work at Yopon Place and Shalom Farms, because everybody is already an evangelist for our work in terms of equipping the next generation of church leaders. So I hope you'll spread the word far and wide that these partnerships are a way in which we can also continue to do what we do, but in a wonderful new way. So thank you all for being with us. It's that time. And I will look forward to, if you have email questions or whatnot, please send them my way. And if I can't answer them, I'll forward the emails to Dominic or Emily, and I'm sure they'll respond. Thank you all again. God bless.